The small little nation of France, in Axis and Allies Global, 1940. What do you do with them? Most people will push this topic aside, and I don't blame them, because France and most of its units will be expelled from Europe by Germany in round 1, and thus cannot purchase any more units, and are left with a few guys in Africa, a guy in French Indochina, which we'll talk about later, and a destroyer off Madagascar, and a fighter and 2 infantry in London. Not that much, but they can definitely make a difference, and that's what we're going to talk about here. Let's talk about the fighter in United Kingdom first. Most players will probably scramble him to the season fight in 110 if the Germans decide to raid it, which is very common, and he'll probably die, and maybe he'll take out the sub along with it. I personally feel scrambling him is a horrible option. He should definitely be saved for later, and that's what we're going to talk about. Do not scramble him if the Germans attack the season in 110. He can serve as a defense in any Moscow victory city if you fly him over there. He can join the guys in French North Africa, or fly him to Egypt, or just keep him in London if the Germans threaten the sea line. He can really fly anywhere. You can really fly him anywhere you want him to, and he can serve as a good defense. An extra 4 less is definitely helpful in any defensive territory that is hard to defend. It's always nice to have that almost guaranteed extra hit. So he should definitely be saved for later. Personally, I like flying him down to join the guys in French North Africa. Let's actually talk about the guys in French North Africa for a second. They are stronger together rather than they are apart. Some players will keep their guys spread apart, maybe to slow down the Italians from taking them, so you don't get them for free. That is a mistake. They should be joined together to form a French force. When you fly that plane down from London, that's 3 guys and a fighter. That's a pretty decent force for the French. Maybe not for other nations, but for the French, that's pretty decent. You can either evacuate them to Morocco in hopes of U.S. support, or keep them in Algeria to have a stalemate with Italy, or even pressure Italy to make them protect Libya, or have them waste their materials on you. As for the guy in the French West Africa, pretty obvious, march him across to Cairo, Egypt. Same with the guy in Syria. Forgive me for my pronunciation. That's 2 extra hits you can take out instead of taking out precious British units in Egypt. The Italians and Germans are really pressuring you there. It's always helpful to have those extra 2 guys there. And he can also serve as means of defense if the Italians are really pushing forward into Belgian Congo, Kenya, and all the areas down here. He can serve as a small means of defense, or to block the Italians from pushing forward past French. I have no idea how to pronounce that, so I'm not even going to try to. But he can either serve as defense down here, or join the other guy up there. As for the destroyer off in Madagascar, he can either be sailed north or east. I personally feel sailing him east is much better. Reason being is because when I'm playing as the British, I would usually do a Toronto raid, and I usually am pretty successful, and I feel the British can easily buy some ships and sail them up there. But as for the fleet in the Pacific, specifically the Indian fleet and the Anzac fleet, they're definitely going to need some help against the enormous Japanese fleet. So it's nice to have the extra destroyer take as a hit, or maybe get an even extra hit. It's always nice to have him. I personally like sailing to the Indian one rather than Anzac, because it's a far stretch. So in turn 1 you can go 1-2, turn 2 you can go 1-2, but having him here, he's kind of open to the Japanese. He can easily be picked off. But if he can go 1-2-1, be there by turn 2. And I feel that's a more safer option for him to go to join the Indian fleet. That's what to do with him. Now let's talk about the guy in French Indochina. In the setup, there is no guy there. So you may be wondering why I placed the guy there. And that's because it's historically accurate according to the game's rules. Let me prove this to you. So in the setup, there's one guy in Algeria, Morocco, and Tunisia. For example, approximately there were 50,000 troops in Algeria during World War II. But in French Indochina, there were 75,000 troops. But you may say, well, it could be a Vichy war. Well, the game clearly states that there are no Vichy wars because they don't want to overcomplicate the game. So there should definitely be a guy in French Indochina. As for the guy in French Indochina, he probably won't survive the Japanese. And even if you try to evacuate him to Calcutta, he probably won't make it very far, so he's probably best off sticking there to make sure the Japanese don't take that for free instead of going to Shan State and then Burma and then India. Because if he goes here, he could easily probably get picked off. And if he stays here, he's defending 2 IPCs. If he goes here, he's only defending 1. So he's probably best off sticking there and so staying there as long as possible. As for the 2 guys in London, they should stay there for the entire game, probably. They're better off defending the capital and 6 IPCs rather than only 2 up there. So I personally like to keep them in London. Now let's have some extra scenarios that are fairly common, but also fairly uncommon. But does happen, and a lot of players don't really know how to react when things like this do happen. And let me give you an example of one of those times. Let's say the French fleet in the Mediterranean surprisingly survives. Let's say the British do really well in the Toronto raid. The Italians have to focus on killing the British rather than the French. Or maybe they just completely forget about them. These ships should not waste their time and energy skirmishing against Italian ships because Germany goes way after them and they can use their humongous Luftwaffe force, air force, to banish these French ships. They should be evacuated to Sea Zone 91 as they're most likely safe from the Luftwaffe, which is the German Air Force. They should be evacuated down here, and they can also protect that sea zone. So for when the Americans land in, that sea zone is friendly rather than hostile. Maybe they can even attack some of the single German subs and pick some of them off, so the British and the Americans don't have to worry about that. Usually these ships won't survive, but if they do, you know what to do now. Same with the cruiser in 110. If he survived, you should also sail him down here. Usually the 2 ships there and the 1 ship there won't survive. Either or, possibly, but usually none of them will survive. That's what to do with that. But now let's talk about if one of the mainland French territories survives, which usually happens. Kind of. It happens fairly a lot. Usually southern France won't survive, but Normandy will survive. In the case that Germany takes France and southern France instead of France and Normandy, Bordeaux, they may take southern France instead, so they have a mini port in the Mediterranean. If they need to assist the Italians, they can, because they can pump out a transport, an infantry, a tank each turn, or 2 infantry each turn, and just keep adding some extra men to Africa to help the Italians out. So if anyone's going to survive, it's going to be Normandy. Now, what do you do with those guys in Normandy? Well, they're better off attacking rather than just sitting around waiting next turn to be attacked. Here's why. Usually the Germans won't make it out of France with any infantry left. All infantry will probably be eliminated, but they'll usually probably keep all their armor intact if they attack France properly. They can go here and take out a mechanized infantry rather than sitting here and having the Germans bring in an extra infantry rather than taking out an infantry. They're better on offense to try to maybe take out a German armored unit than while just taking along an infantry with them while defending. Now, in the case that the Germans poorly defend Belgium, maybe they only land 1 plane there, you could possibly even try to go pick off that plane, which I've seen, is that they only land 1 plane there because they don't expect the French to actually try to go after it. Maybe Belgium isn't even defended at all. some players, I've seen it happen in AAA a lot, where the AI messes up and the AI, when they have the AI going against each other, it will sometimes split up as that. Do not split up these units. All French units in the entire game should be kept together as much as possible. Do not separate them at all. But usually these units will not survive, but I just want to mention that in case if they do. Also, let's talk about liberation. Most players won't liberate Paris, but I personally, whenever I play the game, I always like to liberate Paris, because even though it's a high bet and it costs a lot, if I do get it and able to keep it at least for a few rounds, it's very helpful, because the French can buy some extra units and make the Germans waste a lot of their money on retaking it back, and the Russians will be relieved of some of their pressure. In the case of liberation, you should really probably just be buying infantry to support the Allies, because the Allies will probably make it out with armor, not infantry. So they won't need armor, they'll need infantry to soak up some of the hits. So you should buy infantry, same with the 12 IPC bonus whenever Paris is liberated. For infantry is probably the best call, also best defending capacity. That's what to do for there. Also, one thing a lot of players don't realize is psychological warfare. French are the most noticeable color in the game. They're bright blue, and they stand out compared to all the other dark green, dark red, maroon, all the other more broad colors in the game. They stand out. What they can do is they can make the Axis want to spend as much time as them as possible. What they should do is try to lure the Axis in to spend as much of their time on them rather than the important units like the British units, the American units, all the other allied countries. So you could kind of try to distract the Axis. For example, you could try to lure the Italians into Tunisia, then Algeria, then Morocco, maybe, and so slowly lure them into there. And then when they realize that the British are right on their tail. So you could also try to do that. Try to do some psychological warfare. Can definitely happen. Or use the ship. You can use this ship and try to use Japan you can try to set up Japan, make them want to go after that lone destroyer. But next turn you do a secret crazy attack on Japan that they did not see coming. Completely obliterate their navy. This destroyer too can also act as a blocker instead of using other precious allied ships as well. He can also serve as a blocker too as well. But one last thing I did not mention is can opening. If you fly this fighter down and if you make it with 2 guys in Cairo, that's 2 guys in a fighter that can open. Now this strategy will not work if the Germans bring some guys into Africa, or have a chance of bringing guys into Africa next turn, because Germany goes right after them. But in the case that the Germans will not be able to come into Africa, they can start to can open some Italian troops. Say the Italians are in Tobruk and you're with the British forces, and say you only left infantry behind because they stacked up in Libya. You can go take out that guy so that the tanks and mechanized infantry and the air units can go try to attack them. That's one thing they can do as well. But the only problem with that is that so can opening in IPC territories, it's better for the other allied countries to get those IPCs rather than the French, because the French won't be able to collect it actually. But in general, that's what to do with the French. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any other ideas in the comments, please let me know. Peace out and goodbye.